Pastor Mai, good afternoon. It's 7 minutes past 12. We had 66 new cases of COVID recorded yesterday. Now 620 active cases. 4 people in Nobles, nobody in ICU. 280 people waiting for the result of a test today. And 59 people booked in for a test later on today. From the vaccination dashboard, the information is 68,290 first doses have been administered. 64,811 second doses, 730 third doses, 18,488 booster doses have been administered. That's a total of 152,319 vaccinations, 5,691 shots of vaccine in stock. Guest today is Douglas Central MHK. Chris, I've got to apologise for saying you represented Douglas East, by the way.
No problem.
That previous Chris was just too big of a character.
Larger than life.
Good to have you along today, Chris. Thanks for being with us. So lots to talk about. Indeed, former Policy and Reform Minister, but also now chair of the, what's the official name of the committee? The Housing Committee.
It doesn't exist as yet, but in embryonic form it's called the Housing and Communities Board.
Okay, and does this spring from the sort of grand master plan for government?
Yeah, the Chief Minister first mentioned it in his manifesto to be Chief Minister. He wrote that we should consider appointing a Housing and Communities Minister to work across government to ensure that our response to the housing crisis is effective. I agree with him, and we talked about it in the last week in September, first week in October, as the policy and visions and personnel for his government were being formed.
Okay, is it something you wouldn't mind disagreeing with the Chief Minister over? Because obviously you're a man with quite firm opinions on things.
I am, and I did have a lot of positive proposals about how to fix our housing crisis and identified several dimensions of it. I hope not that we don't disagree, but I do have plans, practical plans to make things better, and I do think I share a vision and also a plan with the Chief Minister, so I'm hoping that the 5 years can deal with the substantial problems that we have, which in some come to a crisis in housing.
And again, you've used the word again. Lots of people have used that word, crisis. Does that imply there will be any immediate steps, or what's the timetable looking like?
No, we have got some quick wins. I've had 5 or 6 important meetings already with key players, and I would hope that around Christmas, just after Christmas, we can begin outlining exactly what we want to solve first. And if people ask, or if you ask, let's see how far you can push me today on some of the quick wins.
What would a quick win be for you?
So, for instance, in winter time, everybody turns to homelessness, and GRI have been doing a wonderful job, but with a meagre means and in less than ideal situation, because it's a quick fix. I'd like to think that we can make moves towards completing the expressions of interest in having a permanent emergency housing arrangement, defining homelessness in law eventually, and then moving to integrate that with social housing, but also supported living environments to deal with the immediate problems of we have poor people in the Isle of Man, and putting a house, a home around somebody is the first step to actually making their life better, both socially but also in employment terms.
Do we know how many people are homeless on the Isle of Man?
It depends how you define homelessness, but there are people. So, for instance, Housing Matters wrote to all members of Tynwald to say that they had 50 or so cases that they're dealing with, and they really don't have a solution that excites them or pleases them, because it's a suboptimal solution. And there are other issues beyond homelessness. So we've got a problem with the standard of many houses, but we'll need the census results to understand how many vacant properties we have, what the occupancy of those properties is, even how many people are living on the island. So that might be slightly longer, but I do hope that in 5 years we can actually use the law and budgets to actually make progress on dealing with bad quality housing. And then the final aspect of housing that I identified as a crisis in my personal manifesto was the fact that housing has become unaffordable for so many people, and we really need to understand why that is and do something about it.
Okay, I just want to take you first regarding homeless and the question of sofa surfing, the question of how people become homeless. Some people are tempted to moralise when it comes to homelessness. Some people will say that people have let themselves get into a situation, and the situation is of their own making, so they should get themselves out of it. How does government tread that line between what some people think is willful homelessness and genuine bad luck and bad circumstances?
And it is a very, very difficult line, and it's one of the key challenges we'll have to face in public. So in other words, if you contribute to your situation through alcoholism or through or through some sort of situation at home, what price do you pay? And I think in the sort of society we live in, we would all say, and we probably also all agree when pushed, that there has to be a safety net that applies regardless of what you've done, in the same way that when you go to the hospital they don't ask you how much alcohol you drink and then charge you as a consequence and so on. So getting that balance is exactly right, but the housing first concept that I believe is all over our approach to this issue is basically saying fix housing, whatever your situation, deal, and then chaotic lives, as they're called in the professional jargon, become easier to become less chaotic, and people can flourish more easily by building on what they actually have that's good about them, rather than people focusing on what's bad about them, which can be an addiction or some other tragic situation which might be self-caused in some senses.
Okay, let's go to, you mentioned the fact that some people are seeing the ship of home owning sail away over the horizon, and no matter how far and how fast they paddle in their canoe, they can't get to that home ownership. First of all, do you think it's a right for people to buy a house?
I think we need to have homes for all, and whether that's an owned home or whether that's a rented home is a question that's again live. So I think there's a generational issue. When you and I were being brought up, we were encouraged to think of home ownership as being the aspiration, but my children don't have that as strongly as I had it. I had my first mortgage at 22 from memory, and that was the norm for many people.
I mean, could you explain to anybody younger then why that was an aspiration? Why was that anchored in people's consciousness that home ownership was seen as a level of success?
It was a level of success, and it also made sense when interest rates were at a certain level. It was also about the fact that the accommodation that was rented was often substandard. But these things have changed through 40 years, through my lifetime, and we now need to make sure that the work stream that I've identified, one of the 6 work streams, is called Homes for All in the plan that I've sent to Council of Ministers and to a few colleagues. And we need to understand a bit more about what we're trying to do before we use the 5 years of legislative time and budget that we've got to enable renting, home ownership, but also renting to buy and other sorts of arrangements.
I mean, when you were knocking doors, and by the way, congratulations!
Thank you very much
on getting back in Douglas Central. Did people ever tell you? Did people ever bring this up that my son, my daughter, people that I know are struggling to get on? And we've all heard the apocryphal tales of young families paying a fortune in rent, can't save up, can never hope to get on the housing ladder, even though it's what they desperately want to do.
Yeah, all the time. Pretty much every house has that sort of story in different situations. It's not only young people, it's also people whose relationships change and whose situation develops whereby they need different types of accommodation. So therefore, 2 absolutely crucial parts of the next 5 years, if I have anything to do with it as the Tsar of Housing and Communities, or the chair of a board, if that board is formed, would be that we've got to make it clear that you need to save, but also to create products to help you save to do what you want. And secondly, we need to move beyond the debate of only focusing on housing as being a local authority issue and being about social housing. 5 out of 6 people don't live in social housing, and so therefore the most important thing now for me is to redress the balance of focusing on social housing, look at the other 5-6 ones. And I've proposed 1 or more housing associations, and I do think that a housing association can do both of those things. It can create savings products and lending products, especially if we work with the banking industry and other types of lenders. And secondly, we can actually rationalise the way we work so that we can treat all people who have housing difficulties fairly and equally, not just focusing on social housing.
How quickly could we have a housing association?
We've got housing associations already in the Isle of Man. We've had them. We've had the law to enable them since 1976. The Manx British Legion has a housing association. There's a thing called the Manx Housing Trust. Now it's a question of expanding the housing associations that we have so that they can do things that are more helpful and appropriate for the current situation.
Who would you see doing that?
I think that's a very important job for me, to bring the right people together.
Third sector?
The third sector, or a company limited by guarantee, whether that's a company or a third sector. So I do see it being outside government. So as yet, I'm doing this from the side of a desk, and the officers who are helping me are doing it from the side of their desks. But I hope to put together a structure as soon as possible. And one request I had was for 2 additional staff, and we're considering moving some other public servants into the area I work. But the second one was, where are you going to do this from, Chris? And the idea was that it was going to be from government offices, but I don't want that. I want it to be outside Bucks Road government offices. It needs to be outside it, because we've got to bring together local authorities, housing associations, the third sector, and lots of other people, banks and so on, to actually solve this problem. And it seems to me that needs to be done cooperatively, collaboratively from outside.
Is there a willingness to do that with those parties?
Yes. So I've had 4 or 5 meetings.
Have you officially started yet, by the way?
I started sort of fixing housing back in 2013, so I have good relationships, and I'm building on those good relationships, and I think that's why the Chief Minister was delighted when I offered to take on this responsibility from outside council ministers.
Did you know public sector rents have gone up today?
Well, that's not a decision that I've made, but it is a. So that's one of the issues. In statutes, in law around the Isle of Man, all sorts of parts of government are responsible for different things. You know, DOI traditionally has been responsible for housing, but it only assumed that when it was transferred from the Department of Social Care. The physical aspect, the standard of housing, mostly is to do with Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture. If you've got an issue with your landlord or with your tenant, you might go to the Office of Fair Trading for advice. When it comes to benefits, that's Treasury and Social Security. That's not joined up. What the Chief Minister and I agreed right at the stage is it's my job to knock heads together and to actually have one place for tenants, for people finding out about house purchases, and bring things together. But
a one-stop shop.
A one-stop shop, but even more importantly than that, central policy. And I don't want people to get a hair running here, but one-stop shop doesn't necessarily mean one place. It could be a digital interface and then one-stop shops in various places around the island. But we need to join things together. We can't afford to just keep putting this off because it's too difficult, as we have been doing since the 10 years that I've been involved in Manx politics.
Okay, Derek dropped a note. Lots of emails and texts coming in regarding this. If you want to put a question to Chris Thomas, you can call, or you can text, or you can email. Barclays Bank did a springboard mortgage, which we investigated for a relative, which wasn't available in the Isle of Man. Did you know anything about this? This is from Derek.
No, it's a very good point. So essentially, one of my early discussions was about gaps in the provision of lending and also savings facilities, and essentially the Isle of Man law to do with securing stuff that's been pledged against loans is inadequate in the Isle of Man, firstly. And secondly, we also have deficiencies in terms of consumer credit legislation. So the big boys like Barclays and Lloyds and Royal Bank of Scotland are likely to be hesitant to create products in the Isle of Man while there's a deficit and a deficiency in terms of the legal arrangements.
Specifically, what is that?
You can't secure, you can't get back assets that have been pledged to you as easily in the Isle of Man because it's a project that Treasury has been working on, debt recovery, but it hasn't got to the end of it as yet. And in terms of consumer credit, there are people who can lend money who don't have to say how much it's costing you to lend the money under law and so on. So basically Barclays will have a group risk policy, a group compliance policy, and it seems to me that what I've got to do in the next 2 or 3 years, working with colleagues and working with all the officers involved, is to try and put together a framework whereby it makes sense for people like Barclays to make products available in the Isle of Man that they might already have available across or in Jersey. Already,
it seems you've got a big pile of paperwork on your desk regarding this. I mean, herding those cats of getting all the various departments to, if you like, cede a bit of territory to you. It's and particularly the stuff with consumer credit. Big job.
Well, I haven't got a pile of paperwork because the officers haven't as yet been engaged fully, so I've only got what's up here. I'm taking the Minister Lord Brennan approach to this. I'm keeping it simple. I'm agreeing certain things that we're going to be doing quickly in the medium term. Last Monday, I did have the privilege of meeting a whole bunch of officers online and laying out the 6 work streams that I'd envisaged. Those work streams were presented to Council of Ministers on Thursday, I hope, and let's see what happens. But it's not a big pile of papers. That's not going to change anything. What matters is identifying the priorities and doing something about it. And I was responsible for housing and environmental standards for housing and fire regulations for housing between 2013-16. I hope that gives me the knowledge and the experience, but also the relationships to do something quickly. And this is an appeal to all those officers out there. Trust me, collectively we're stronger than if we're just redoing things that happened in the last few years.
Okay, Jewin, you're live with Chris Thomas.
Hey, good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon,
Jewin. Just looking through, you seem to be at the moment one of the most, I would say, experienced worldwide politicians that we have. Central bank sales analysis, training modular leader, 20 years experience with multinational donor agencies, European Union, World Bank, First Initiative. Seem to have an array of CV behind you. I want to ask 2 questions. First, an international one, and then going on to a national one. I'm sure with all your experience as a world travel person, you can see the clear overreach that governments are having at the moment around the world. And consequently, the amount of power and money that's taken up to now to censor most of what's been going on to the people. I would like to know what your take is on the current overreach of government into people's lives at the moment, and how that's going to fit in the future with the so-called great narrative that we're in now and the great reset that these people want, where the Isle of Man is going to fit into that. My second question, picking up on what you're just talking about, and the Landlords Bill, which you were involved with in 2014. From what I could see from that to start with, it was unworkable when Chris Robertshaw brought it out, and you've done a lot of work on it since then. Do you think that actual landlord regulations bill now, the Landlords and Tenants Act, is a workable act as it is? Because it's still needing, from what we can see, a lot of work doing to it. So I'm just wondering what your uptake is on that as it stands now and going forward.
Well, thank you very much for those 2 excellent questions. I'll answer them briefly. The civil liberties aspect of the crisis, the COVID crisis, is very important to me. In 2017, I moved for a policy called border security policy that involved knowing more about people coming into the island, and it was against the Manx public opinion, it seemed, and it certainly didn't get anywhere in 2017. But in 2020-21, we did what I couldn't do in 2017, plus lots more. So I do worry about the overstretch of governments like you do, and I'm now on the Constitution and Legal Committee, and I'm having the first meeting of that at 2:00, and I will propose that we begin considering that issue. The second point is, I also agree with you that there is the potential that the Landlord Private Registration Act has the potential to extend that overreach, and also it's got the potential to increase silos in government rather than reducing them. So I do plan to work with the Department of Infrastructure, Public Estates and Housing Division as soon as possible to actually work out practically what the timetable will be for getting the best out of what was in that bill and ameliorating what was the worst out of it. And one of those things that I put on the table is Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture has a division already looking at the physical standards of buildings, working with the fire service and others. Why wouldn't they make an announcement and lead specifying what the insulation standards are and what the fire standards are for houses and so on? And the second point is we already have debt counselling and a degree of consumer protection at the Office of Fair Trading, so why wouldn't that be depoliticised and upgraded to actually be more of an interface? And very important in that is I actually passionately believe in an ombudsman scheme with public support, because the fact that it seems to me that there isn't enough revenue to operate an ombudsman scheme like operates across. So we'll have to raise at the earliest possible opportunity the idea that we'll make up for that by actually having public support for an ombudsman scheme to improve the relationships between landlords and tenants to satisfy both people better. Hopefully that's helpful.
I just find that it is, yeah, very helpful, Chris. Very positive. It just concerns a lot of people, obviously, that local governments and council have not been included in this landlords bill. You know from the work that you've done in it that there is an awful lot of regulation in there now, which is kind of not imposed anyway. And if that regulation itself was imposed, it would be enough. So when we've got now people copy and pasting bits of legislation from all over England, which again, there's a lot of stuff which has no place on our island and has no place. But I do agree with you that there has to be some reform. I just feel that they're whipping landlords and investors, because landlords are investors. At the end of the day, if they haven't got a certain amount of investment, they're going to take their money somewhere else. That's clear, which is going to cause you an even bigger problem. So I just think fairness right the way across. If you're going to do this for private landlords, then you need to do it for council houses as well, because I've been in some pretty dire council houses.
I agree. I agree. There's got to be the same environmental standards environmental health standards and property standards have got to apply across the piece. I agree with that. And secondly, I agree with the what I think I'm hearing from you is that at the end of the day we need to spend tens of £millions on upgrading housing, and that's got to come from somewhere, and that's only going to come if we work with private people to actually use their money to do it, as well as providing some public funds to do bits that it doesn't make any sense for private people to do. So we need to cooperate, and as soon as we get up and running, we will be out there liaising more anew in a refreshed way to actually put in place proper standards and proper arrangements across the piece. That's not a criticism of what Housing Division did from the Department of Infrastructure, but they know and they recognise towards the end of the bill that they're up against it, and they were just doing it so quickly because politicians expected them to have the landlord bill before the election. It's now in place. We've now got to operationalise it, and that will be an important part of my job, but it's not going to be a quick win. OK, all right. Jewin, thanks for calling us today. We appreciate that. Eddie's with us now. Eddie, you're live with Chris Thomas, MHK.
Hiya, Chris. All right.
Fine, thanks. And you?
Yeah, not bad. First of all, I'd just like to ask you a question. The job you're in, you should know the answer. The question is, I'll tell you what my reason for coming on after you've answered the question, if you can. The question is, how many private houses are being built on the Isle of Man, and how many commissioners' houses are being, council houses, if you call it, are being built on the house? Just for a comparison. Okay, so private houses are being, there are private houses being built, lots of them. The area plan for the east and the area plan for the south gave permission for that. In larger estates, more than 25% of them are affordable, but they're not social housing. In terms of social housing, there are some units being built, but pretty much all of them are replacements for other ones that are being demolished. So it depends what period you're after. But one thing I would say to you is an early document I want to produce is we used to have an annual housing policy progress review which was published until 2009, and I'm working with colleagues on updating that so that we actually have that sort of number so people can see the trend that you're hinting at. So the answer really is we're building very, very little council houses. Very true, yes. Yeah, right. Well, the point I'm coming on is exactly, it will cover that. All of the older generation in the Isle of Man are now actually telling the young ones not to buy their own house. So we're not really bothered about whether they're affordable or not. The point is that the older generation in the Isle of Man at the moment is absolutely sick to death. That you work hard all your life, you own your own house so you can pass it on to your children. The point that happens is that somebody who squandered it and peed it against the wall is in the next bed in the hospital and the care home to you, and he's getting his for free, and you have to pay full whack by selling your own house. It's time that was scrapped totally. It is in Scotland. They don't have it in Scotland. They're actually talking about it in England, But we as a small island should scrap it more or less immediately, because it is such an unlevel playing field, as a lot of the legal people use, the level playing field. Why on earth can we afford to give money away to third countries when we need it here?
All right. Well, that's very good observations, and I think you'll remember that in July 2018, it was me who actually put forward the 5 options for reforming residential and social care, and I was very disappointed at the time and remain disappointed that Department of Health and Social Care, Department of Infrastructure basically squashed that at the time. They wanted to link it into wider reform of the healthcare system and national insurance. I was very pleased to hear Minister Hooper saying that he wanted to accelerate the timetable. Minister Harmer said that, however, when he came into his role as Minister of Policy and Reform, and then it was squashed subsequently because it is a difficult question. But I completely agree with you. We've got to sort this out. Second point I would make, though, is that we've got owner occupation and we've got social housing at either end, but in the middle we've got housing associations, we've got rent to buy schemes, we've got all sorts of possibilities, and I would like to explore that middle ground rather than just the two extremes as part of this work. And the third point you make, and this is probably the thing that Manx Radio pick up on as a headline, but I just want to say, as on average we're all living longer, the question has to be asked, and I'm asking this inside my family at the moment, because my mum's got a very definite view on this. You know, when you save money through your life, are you saving it for your own care now you're living longer and care is so much more expensive in life, or are you actually passing it on to your children? Certainly, when I was being brought up, we had the expectation that we would receive things from our parents, but my mum wants me to understand that her and my dad and her, have never seen that view. They take the view that they're going to look after themselves, and then we get what's left, and so on and so on. So those sorts of questions have to be asked. What is the point of accumulating life as we live longer on average, and the costs of living longer stack up? It's a great thing that we live longer. There's loads of things that people do actively in their time, but it costs money, and the problem with the Scottish model is what it effectively means is taxpayers, companies, and younger people are paying for people who live longer than perhaps they will ever see, and they'll be burnt down.
Well, we've already paid for that during our lifetime while we've been working.
You have, and I see that because I'm nearly 60, and I see that I've paid in a lot of taxes and a lot of national insurance, but my mum keeps telling me, ultimately the savings that she's acquired along her life and the pensions that she's acquired, she plans to make sure that she's never a burden on us and use that.
The main point, Chris, is the fact that you could be in bed alongside somebody else, one pays and one doesn't.
Yeah.
It should not be, regardless of all the little bits and pieces that you've thrown at us there about living older.
Yeah.
It should not be, because we want a level playing field.
I completely agree.
The whole of the older generation now is so frustrated.
Yeah.
That they have a minefield of legality the minute somebody goes into a home.
Yeah.
First, to get it all in place, you've even allowed them, I think it's 26 weeks to sort that out.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like that. It should be an automatic thing where you don't pay. Okay. Simple as that. You've worked hard all your life. You've got a house. The fella next door's got a council house, but he's got a £50,000 camper outside it. That doesn't matter. The whole matter is it should be level right across the board.
So
if it's good for one, it's good for the other.
No, I do agree. It's got to be fair between the generations. But what we proposed back in 2018 was that we should perhaps think of 3 types of costs to do with care. The sort of complex needs, like sadly my father had in recent months, that should probably be provided by the health service in a new unified health and care service like Minister Hooper imagines. Secondly, there has to be a safety net, because you don't want to create new homeless old people, so there has to be a safety net, but the quality of the accommodation and the standards by which you live, perhaps that's the sort of thing that should be entirely that's where we need to do the work, because it's not perceived to be fair, because as you say, my dad was alongside somebody who hadn't paid a thing, whereas my mum was absolutely adamant that even if we didn't have anything...
Did you feel resentful about that?
We didn't in our family, because you can't stand up to my mum. Her will goes, and so on and so on. But it's just a question that she made me start thinking about, which is she said, we've always told you that, Chris, we'll look after you. and she thinks she's done that well enough, and then we'll look after ourselves. But it's a question that we need to ask, and I hope that Minister Hooper's the sort of person, and I work with him to actually encourage this. And I agree with Eddie.
Okay, final word, Eddie, if you would. Oh, we've lost Eddie. Sorry about that, but lots more questions coming in for Chris Thomas regarding housing. We haven't even got to the post office yet.
Take a beautiful kitchen in a gorgeous fisherman's cottage. Mix in yourself and some friends. Add an award-winning chef, and you have the recipe for a truly unique experience. Join Chef Andrea at home in Port St Mary for a creative cookery masterclass. From macarons to soufflés, gain inspiration, tips and new skills, and then enjoy the results. A choice of demonstrations for groups of 4 to 6 booking now. Search Angelica Bell Isle of Man online and Facebook.
Sure is giving you more this Christmas. You can get the latest iPhone 13 from just £21.50 and the new 10-inch iPad from only £10 per month. To be sure that you get it right for the festive season, remember that everything you want this Christmas is at Sure. Plus we deliver free too, just like Santa. Check out the latest Apple products today at Sure.com. That's Sure.com. Because this Christmas you're guaranteed to.
Get more from Sure.
T's and C's apply.
Calling all grown-ups. We need you to be a foster carer. Right now, there are young superheroes like me across the island who are looking for super carers. Anyone can wear a cape and run around stopping bad guys, but being someone who helps a young person grow, being someone who inspires, that's a real superhero. To find out more about the Mockingbird Family Model Pilot and the Family Placement Service, call 610000.
Right, class, it's time to learn the ABCs of car buying. Pay attention to the back. A is for Athol Garage, where the A-team will look after you. B is for Ballasalla, the home of Athol Garage, where you'll always find a hand-picked choice of quality used cars. And if they don't have it, they'll find it for you. C is for confidence, which is what you can buy with. Visit athol.co.im or call 820082. Athol Garage, where buying a great car's as easy as ABC.
It's said the number 13 is unlucky for some.
But it could be lucky for you this festive season.
Here at Manx Radio, we've teamed up with IQ to give you 13 days to win an iPhone 13 on the 13th of December.
Starting tomorrow, we'll launch our Luck of the Draw competition, where all you have to do is work out a daily photo clue on the Manx Radio Facebook page.
Text your answers throughout the 13 days and you'll go into the draw to win the latest in smartphone technology.
So be lucky this Christmas with the nation's station, Manx Radio and IQ, the island's Apple premium reseller.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
21 minutes before 1, Chris Thomas MHK is with us. And David, you're live with Chris Thomas.
Hi, Andy and Mr. Thomas. Just a few questions I want to ask you, Chris, regarding your terms of reference on this board. And I think you sort of like hinted who's going to be on it. What will the numbers be? And will the Landlords Association be part of that? And what else?
Okay, so the board isn't yet established, and I don't think I've hinted at who the membership is, but so what the Chief Minister and I have agreed is that I'll stir things up and then make a proposal. I've made a proposal, and some important parts of the proposal I've made is that I'm looking for open recruitment for the board members rather than having representatives of people. So we'll be looking to have a recruitment of lay members, and there won't be a representative of the local authorities and a representative of the landlords. It'll be a smaller board, but it'll be open recruitment for members. That's my proposal to the Chief Minister, because I think both of us are in principle agreed that it's a Chief Minister's committee that's being established called Housing and Communities Board. And but having said that, it's absolutely vital that we talk to the landlord. It's absolutely vital that we talk to Housing Matters, Gray, on that issue. It's absolutely vital that we talk to banks, to developers, to local authorities, to everybody, all the stakeholders in the housing situation.
So you'll be under actually the Chief Minister's umbrella for legal purposes.
That's what's currently envisaged.
Okay, that's fine on that. The other question I was wanting to ask you too is regarding the Landlords Association, and it was defeated some time ago when you were in Parliament there. Do you not think or agree with me that the local government unit now should be disbanded that those houses and stock should be allocated to each of the regional local authorities that are close to them to manage and get on with it. Because it's, in my opinion, I'm not renting anything at all. It's totally unfair to put one regulation onto one and not onto the others when they're all in the same boat.
No, I agree with you that we've got to have bold action regarding the 1,200 DOI housing units, and I do agree with you that we need to work regionally, but they're just proposers at this stage, and this is a listening chair or czar or something, and I do hope that we can work out the best solution. But it makes no sense to have so many different separate entities involved in housing when we can achieve something more, a better outcome by doing things more rationally. So I look forward to coming to Onken and talking with the commissioners. And
you'll be saving in staff as well. The other thing I was going to ask
that's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily the case. I don't want to get any hairs running here, but we need to.
Why would we want to run two housing divisions or two housing? You just need a manager, you need a legislation officer, and maybe secretarial support.
Yeah,
savings to be had.
And the local government.
You've got to make those decisions.
Yeah, and the local government units is in the mix, as well as the public estates and housing division. But it'd be premature for me to give an opinion, a definitely formed opinion at this stage. But my opinion is along the lines of your opinion, and we do need to make quick progress. And I've been frustrated since 2013 that we haven't done that before.
The final one for me is when benefit is paid by social services and given as a housing element to a particular person. I can understand the human right is that person can do with the money what he wants with it. But when it's given to him as a housing allocation for money to pay your rent, to make sure you got a house over your head, when it's not done or not passed on to a landlord, a local authority, which includes government as well, shouldn't action be taken? Isn't that fraudulent?
Yeah, and one of the quick wins that I hope to realise is to make changes to the way that Social Security deals with housing benefits, and conversations are just beginning to take place, and I hope that we can come up with legal and policy and financial changes as soon as possible over the winter.
Final thing for me, Andy, is we should be getting away from, because you live in a local authority house or a private house. The fella's quite right. You earn all your money to buy a house that you get to a certain point in your life when you need some help, and the government says sell your assets. Yep. That's not an answer.
Well, okay. my preferred model was the Jersey model. It's written up in that document back from 2018. It's got connections with the cap, but also with the collar, and I do hope that Minister Hooper can actually fulfil his intention to speed up decisions in this space, because it's incredibly important. You used to phone in, David, regularly complaining that I hadn't done things in terms of social care, but it was taken out of my hands. It was actually the Minister of Infrastructure and the Minister of Health who took the decision to close down the work on residential and funding care, and I hope now it can be restarted and we can make progress quicker than 2024 as it's currently scheduled for.
The good thing is it's not only me, Chris, now. It's loads of people looking for action, and we'll be waiting.
Okay. All right, David, thank you. It's 1:45. Here's Stephen on Mannin Line, live with Chris Thomas. Hello, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas, and good afternoon, listeners.
Good afternoon.
I think partially you, Mr. Thomas, you've touched on what I wanted to speak about, which is that I do hope that it just doesn't rest with the Health Minister, that you're able to include within your remit the issue of care, as we have an elderly population, and it will, if we get this right, it will mean that properties will be able to be freed up for the rest of the younger population. I do think there is a genuine issue there. I'm not sure do I agree with the gentleman that spoke earlier, where everybody should be funded entirely. If you've been had a very successful career and job, then you will have been paid more than the average person. So that we do still base our care system on the ability to pay, and the earnings is all related, the tax is all related to that issue. So that is a difficult thing for you to consider. But I do hope that you're able, within your remit, to cross these departmental lines, and we don't just have silos. And I'll give you an example of in Peel, where we've lost a care home, which the Corran home, which was an essential part of the community because it wasn't one where people could go that needed medical care. It was just the fact that if you could no longer lift a kettle or you could no longer clean the house or prepare your own meals or bathe unaided, then the Corran home fulfilled that position. And there's a number of other private homes still around the island because a lot of the government homes and a lot of the private nursing homes are all or nothing. It's geared up completely for complete nursing care or nothing at all. So I do feel that this issue of care for the elderly and care provision is, I hope, something that is within your remit, and you can able to cross these departments to
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Inside the island plan, there's a sentence along the lines of an objective of the island plan is to ensure the island's housing stock meets the needs of the population now and into the future. And in the terms of reference and the work streams that have been written up before and subsequent to that, there's a clear statement that the housing and communities work includes reviewing housing provision with regards to nursing care, social care, home care, and the role of extra care in elderly housing. And it's absolutely crucial that we look at this across the piece. You can't solve any of these issues in isolation. So, yes, it categorically goes beyond the scope of the Minister of Health and Social Care. I'm sure he knows that. He'll be working. He'll have to work cross government, and pleased to be involved in that.
Okay, Stephen, thank you very much for your call today. 12 minutes before 1.
In our quest to remove all single-use plastic from our milk packaging, Isle of Man Creamery is launching a new 100% recyclable 1.75 litre carton made from sustainable and renewable sources. We're the first in the British Isles to offer these new large cartons, and you can pick them up now in local retailers or add them to your Isle of Man Creamery doorstep delivery. Visit isleofmancreamery.com. Plant-based cartons from Isle of Man Creamery. Better for the environment, better for you.
If you're looking for that special squeak, it has to be Manx Glass and Glazing. Specialists in making and installing PVCU and aluminium windows, doors and more for over 30 years. Manx Glass and Glazing's expert team can bring the sunshine into your home or business. They're members of the premier UK Craftsman Independent Network, which is industry renowned for delivering quality professional products. Visit manxglass.com or visit the showroom on Snugborough Trading Estate for that special squeak.
Dreaming of early retirement? Longing for that holiday home in the sun? Want to spend more time with family? It could happen sooner than you think. Chase Wealth offers financial lifestyle planning to help you achieve your life goals and financial wellness. With a comprehensive review of your finances and a bespoke plan tailored to you. Visit our new website, chasewealth.im, advising the island for over 24 years. Chase Financial Services, trading as Chase Wealth Solutions, is regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Talk about Christmas cheer. This one will have the lords and ladies leaping. Collect a free gift from Manx Telecom worth up to £320 when you buy any handset on a smart unlimited tariff over 24 months. So make a smart move and call in store or visit mt.im/Christmas for gift ideas. Manx Telecom, here to keep you fully connected and totally contented this Christmas. T's and C's apply.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Chris Thomas MHK is with us, and Councillor Watson, Devon Watson. Hi, Devon, you're live with Chris Thomas.
Hi. Hey, great to chat with you.
Afternoon, Councillor Watson.
The Housing Board has like a really complex and really wide remit, but I know that every MHK on the campaign trail, they all campaigned on the idea of doing something about runaway house price inflation and providing access to affordable housing. But this is a problem that grows worse by the week. I know that Manx Radio put out a post talking about the fact that we have about £1,000 increase in average housing prices a month. Every time that increases, more and more people are pulled out of the possibility of ever owning a home, ever, right? And all this does is to the benefit of private investors and landlords. And I know the government is engaging in a lot of discussions and conversations with the landlords associations to protect their investment. But a group that has absolutely no representation are people who don't own homes and are renting and would like to because they're a disorganized constituency Is anything going to be done to sort of arrest runaway house price inflation?
Thank you, Devon. Councillor Watson. The government isn't having lots of discussions with the Landlord Association, as far as I'm aware. I haven't met the Manx Landlord Association. I haven't met any people on that side. However, I have met Housing Matters, and through them I've talked with some other people who do try to represent the tenants and so on. That's just the timing of it. I do plan to make everybody equally. You make a very important issue. The last government for the last 5 years had a national indicator of its success, median house price against median income, and it also calculated it for under 25's median income as well. Describing the problem, though, doesn't solve it, and I do hope that you accept, I'm sure you do, we can't deal with all of the solutions in the few minutes we have remaining on this programme, but very pleased to talk with you, Councillor, and all the other councillors and commissioners around the island about the part that local authorities who are involved in housing have, but also with people who would feel they will never get on the housing ladder and come up with solutions that from their minds that will work for them.
Okay, appreciate that, Devon. Obviously, Chris Thomas will be speaking to you in the future. We got Donald now on Mannin Line. Hi, Donald.
Hi, I'll be very quick. You've got your housing sorted out.
Not quite yet. But post office is there as well. They're important as well.
Well, we haven't got to the post office, but I just want to give you the situation. We're living in Santon, out of Portgrennock, right in the country. Yeah. So we were going to the post office in Ballasalla. The post office in Ballasalla was shut, and then they installed a new machine in the Spar shop. Right, so I goes down and I buy my stamps because obviously we haven't the post office in the area, and I put my money in the machine on Friday. It swallowed my money and no stamps. Right, so fine. The shop, you can't blame the shop. The shop kept my receipt, and I goes down again this morning because I've got a letter I want to get off. And, of course, nobody has been down. They keep ringing up, and nobody comes down to sort out the machine. So I thought, right, I'll go down to the bakery. He keeps stamps behind the counter. He was due to have stamps on Friday, and no stamps arrived. So, in other words, there's no stamps in Ballasalla, no stamps in the area. And I thought to myself, what's going on? Because a fortnight ago, for the first time in my life, I got a card through the post delivered to my address, telling me there was a package at the post office waiting for me because it was underpaid. So I jumps in the car. Now this is all environmentally friendly, isn't it? Driving the car, down to Ballasalla twice, down now to Douglas, and of course I paid £2.30. I don't mind that, but the point is, why can't the postman bring the card? Bring the package, you pay the money, and that solves the problem. I just don't understand where we're coming from with this service to the people. Now, I'll leave that with you because I've still got the letter that I want to get sent off, but I'll make another trip now. That's funny, the postman has just arrived. However, I will now...
There you go, what power we have. I actually sorted that while you were speaking. I phoned them up and got...
Absolutely, he's just come down the road. However, I'll now have to go to Douglas, right, or to Castletown, so that's another 10-mile trip, round trip, to get a stamp to post a letter I want to get to Ramsey. Or the better thing is to jump in the car and go for a run to Ramsey. But it just seems we're all very eco-friendly and we want to, to save the world and all this. But we don't seem to be doing anything at the grassroots to actually save people going out in the car.
Well, I think we are, and your specific proposal, seemed to me to be a very good one. There's about 5 or 6 other things that I'd like to say in response about other things that are going on, but I think I'm going to have to try and persuade Mr. Wint to have us back in the new year to talk about post office.
I don't want to paraphrase a former chief minister, but it seems to intimate the wheels have fallen off at ground level. In that you should be able to get stamps from a machine, and if you don't get stamps from a machine, the machine should tell head office, and they should put some in it.
Exactly, and the machines are just a stage on the process to a better system, and the better system I would like to put together in a letter that I sent to you Mr. Gelling, if that's all right. Having dealt with your immediate problem straight away now, I think it's quite important that we actually try to learn from your experience, and I would like to put together a proposal for you to help us work out our new operation. So the new board that comes in February with the new vice chairman can actually take into account some of your thoughts, and I do think hopefully I can persuade Mr. Wint to have us back in January, and we can continue this conversation.
Okay, thank you, Donald. Thanks for calling today. It's good to hear from you, but well, we didn't get onto the post office until gone 10 to 1 o'clock, because everything blew up. So thank you for being with us, and that invitation does stand. Can you come back in the new year?
Love to. Thank you very much.
We'll
hopefully we'll come with the vice chair and we'll have some good news.
Okay. By the way, in the meantime, what's your email address for anybody who wants
chris.thomas@parliament.org.im, or you can change the last bit to @gov.im. chris.thomas@gov.im.
Thanks for being with us, Chris.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Good to talk to you. Thanks to Barry Redfern producing today, and thank you for listening.
WINT